said again in the context of the SDGs, that human dignity will be developed and pursued, leaving nobody behind. So these are some of the things we engage with now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cardinal Turkson. And now we want to bring again Director Noronha. Please, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And if you want a personal experience, I was trained as an economist and I saw the impacts of economic growth and development on the lives of people, having lived in India almost all of my life. I mean, it was very clear that there was a very clear connection between economic growth and the impact of lives. And it wasn't fair that, this had to happen. And yet you did need economic development for the sake of the aspirations of people, but also to give them food on the table and clothes on their bodies. And so we needed to work towards a balance. And I totally agree with the minister who said that you need to be fired up to be able to continue with your work. And the reason why UNEP does the work it does is because all the people in it are very fired up because they have this kind of principles that drive them. And just to go to our work, the one that really I think is going to hugely change the way the economic systems work is the work that we do with the finance sector. We're looking to change the way the banking sector, insurance, as well as the investors do things differently and try to bring these ethical values into the way they work. And we work with some really interesting investors like the Church of England Pension Fund, as well as the Swedish Council of Ethics and others, in order to create that change that is required, because we totally believe that to move the economic system, we need to address a lot of these ethical principles, but the ethical principles need to work through these economic agents, economic and financial agents, in order to create that change. I can go on for a long time, Excellency, but I'll pause now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Karina, please take the floor. But I also want to tell you that in the final round, since you have a time restraint in New York, I will invite you to be first in the third round. So the minister can relax a little bit and you'll be ready to be the first in the third round. Please take the floor now.
Thank you so much. I have to apologize because there's street noise. I'm in New York City and you might hear some street noise. They just began some project. I want to share an experience I had with movement building or activism. To return to the Sustainable Goal 13, the climate goal, which is so urgent, I think it's important which faith leaders have pointed out, to realize that the same activity that's the main driver of the climate crisis, the digging and burning of fossil fuels, causes this local air pollution that is harmful to human health. And the location of these toxic sites is always near communities that have been deprived of the money and power to resist them. Racism plays a big role in this in the United States and I'm sure around the world. And so one of the most important things that we can do is to break the barriers that would render these communities powerless or marginalized. And of course, anti-racism must be a part of sustainable development. And so this experience that I had was in Virginia. There was a giant compressor station planned, a fracked gas compressor station planned in a historic African-American community called Union Hill. And there was a coming together, an interfaith organizing led by Swami Dayananda of a place called Yogaville nearby, and by Black Baptist ministers who are from the historic African-American community in Union Hill. And so I was able to be a part of that. Everything that we do is in collaboration, but to see the coming together in prayer and ceremony, and then in marches and rallies and in speaking up, and to see how it made a difference so that project was actually canceled. The aggregate effects of all these toxic sites, as we know, is to harm the planet as a whole. We can come together in solidarity at the source in a beautiful way. So thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thanks. And now I invite Professor Petersen to take the floor, to be directly followed by Professor Khalid.
I grew up in the field of religion and ecology before it was even called that. And so I remember that in the 70s, and we could talk more about this in round 3, some environmentalists and scientists were saying that religion is to blame for lack of care for the natural world. And I think that discussion is not entirely over. Then in the 1980s, there was resistance in religious communities to attending to these issues because people would say, we're concerned about poverty, we're concerned about women, we're concerned about race issues, and we're concerned about war and nuclear disarmament, and we don't have time to start getting upset about a certain bird being endangered, or trees and rivers. It was a sense that there's an opposition between social justice and caring for the natural world. And that, I think, is over now. The Pope's encyclical Laudato Si has been a very powerful statement, the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor. But I remember when it was promulgated, reading in the New York Times, well, guess what? Social justice and caring for nature are deeply connected. And I thought, well, this only took 30 or 40 years of, to kind of become firmly grasped. And also in various religious communities in the same historical context, there was a lack of knowledge about the teachings of one's own tradition with regard to the natural world for some of the same reasons. So there's been an enormous educational task and an advocacy task that has gone on through the past decades. And now things are coming to focus in a way that is very, very important and is a joy to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Khalid.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was referring to the Ethical Moral Foundation. It's all very well and good, but then the challenge is, how do you turn this into some kind of reality on the ground? I think we have 3 projects that I'd like to tell you about quite briefly. And one with dealing with fish conservation, other with deforestation, the other about training. There was a situation in Zanzibar some years ago where the fishermen were dynamiting coral reefs. And we were invited to do a workshop on how to re-educate the fishermen about the responsibilities to the environment and the responsibilities to their teachings. A 2-day workshop, and something that the mainstream organizations couldn't do, we established in about a couple of days, and the fishermen stopped dynamiting coral reefs. And as a result of that, we established a 2,000 square kilometer of the Zanzibar Islands. There's one small island called the Misali Range. And we established a conservation zone in that part of the world, which lasted a few years. Secondly, we were motivated by the whole aspect of deforestation in Indonesia. And we set up a project called Schools for Trees. That is, schools in the Western countries, in the developed countries, assisting schools in the undeveloped countries like Indonesia, Pakistan, and so on, where children could collaborate with each other and also use this as an educational process, where if you begin to teach our children to plant trees, they're also learning about the natural world and the connections of trees with other sentient beings and biodiversity. And thirdly, we have a training program based on the ethics that I spoke to earlier on, ranging from Western Nigeria to Indonesia. And we are still developing themes to multiply these initiatives. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you indeed. Ms. Basu, please.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So I founded Green Hope Foundation on my return from Rio Plus 20 when I was 12 years old, with the objective of redressing the lack of awareness and inclusivity of children and youth in the sustainable development process. And at Green Hope Foundation, we use education for sustainable development as a transformative tool to drive the behavioral change, providing children and youth with the awareness, skills, and knowledge to think and act for a sustainable future, moving away from consumerism and an education system that pushes children to be way ahead of others, while in effect we should be taught to take everyone along and leave no one behind. So I developed an advocacy tool called Environment Academy, which are engagement platforms organized by children for children, with some of our members as young as 6 years old. And majority of the youth we engage with have never been to school, don't speak English, cannot read and write. So to circumvent these issues, we use innovative non-formal communication modes in our advocacy, like music, art, dance, drama, sport, and fashion, to spread awareness. And this enables them to view the current challenges as one's own and shows them how to approach it at a grassroots level, thereby creating new values and behaviors that contribute to the creation of a sustainable society. And armed with this knowledge, the Academy participants venture out into their local communities, taking definitive steps towards conservation, thereby localizing the SDGs. And our mission is to reach those who are the farthest first. And with our 200,000 plus workshops and academies, we've engaged over 97,000 youth, so Syrian refugees, children in orphanages in India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, Rohingya refugees in Kutupalong, the world's largest refugee camp, children of prisoners in Kenya. And with them, we've planted over 110,000 trees and 5,000 mangroves worldwide. And through all of our interactions, I've really realized that children, whether they're in a refugee camp or in a school in Manhattan, just take to nature instinctively. And all they need is a spark, and Green Hope Foundation is providing that catalyst, using education as the tool for change.
Well, we congratulate you on your enthusiasm and success. Indeed, very hopeful to have that statement included. And now we come to the final speaker in this round. Mother Frida Jacks, if you could please take the floor.
Thank you. In my own life, I've seen water be degraded quite a bit. When I was young, my father used to have a nail in his boat, and he could just take a cup from that nail, scoop up, and drink the water. Obviously, you cannot do that just about anywhere now. And so I wanted to just go over the fact that I got involved with the anti-fracking movement here in New York State. And thankfully, the governor decided to stop that effort here in New York. Using water, thousands of gallons of water each time they bore down into the and then sideways for a mile and then blasting. So I was fortunate enough, being a clan mother, I was accepted and asked to show up in many different places to speak about all the dangers, and there are many, of hydrofracking. So that is one way that I have been involved in helping keep our resource, our wonderful water, cleaner. Unfortunately, we know that there's much, much more work to be done to help us have good potable water all over this world. So thank you.